story.
And then
Take
if
it
you
away.
have questions,
Then we have
we'll
questions.
take questions.
We don't have a microphone. Can everybody hear me in the back?
Pretty much.
If now move in closer.
Yeah, move
There's
in
room
closer.
here.
So this is going to be a story. This is a story that became famous 8th century BC in India. It became so famous that people told it to people, generations told it to generations, and to this day, this story is still being told, not only told, but studied, because they think that there's some really something worthwhile in the story. It comes from an ancient book that's called the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, 8th century BC, before Jainism, before Buddhism, before any philosophy on this planet, this story was being told. It's probably the oldest philosophical discussion recorded that we know of. And it goes something like this. There was a time in ancient India where even the kings were interested in philosophy. And there was one king at that time who was the biggest king of his era, and he wanted to know who was the wisest man in his kingdom. So he announced that there was going to be a debate. I'm inviting the wisest people to come in my kingdom from all the corners. We're going to have a debate. Whoever wins that debate, whoever proves himself to be the wisest of all of the wise men, I'm going to give a prize. And that prize is going to be 1,000 cows. And each cow has 5 kilos, that's 10 pounds of gold on each horn. 20 pounds of gold, 1,000 cows. Can someone do the math? A lot of gold. So all the wise men come. The king, his name was Janaka. He's the referee. And they debated and debated and debated. And finally, after a week of debating, one guy won the debate. In the Upanishad, they describe the debate. I won't get into all the arguments, but one guy won the debate. And his name was Yajnavalkya. Now, Yajnavalkya was pronounced the wisest man in the kingdom. So he came up, and Janaka the king said, Yajnavalkya, you have won the debate. I'm giving you these 1,000 cows with all of this gold. You're a very wealthy man now, Yajnavalkya. What are you going to do? So Yajnavalkya, it turns out, had 2 wives, which is already an interesting fact that the wisest man in the country had 2 wives.
He wasn't that smart after all.
Wife, happy life.
This guy's got 2 wives. It shows that you don't have to be a monk living in a cave as a celibate to be the wisest man in the country. That's one point.
What's the other point?
The other point was that he didn't want the cows or the gold at that point. He decided that because the whole debate was who knew the real nature of ultimate reality. And so when he won the debate, he decided that now I want my mind to just dwell on that reality. So I'm splitting.
Wait a second.
Hold it.
So far.
I'm going out of here. I don't want the cows. I don't want the gold. So he called his two wives to come up. And he had one wife whose name was Tatiana. And the other one was called Maitreya. And he said to Tatiana, my dear wife, I'm going to give you 500 cows with 500 pairs of horns filled with gold. You'll be well taken care of. You've loved me as a wonderful wife, and I feel wonderful towards you. The wife said, oh, Yagi Balaka, you are very generous and kind, and I wish you well in your journey to the forest, and thank you very much. And then he turned to his other wife, Maitreya, and he says, Maitreya, you've been a wonderful wife. I'm going to give you 500 cows, with 20 pounds of gold on each of those cows. 1,000 pounds. Edward. A lot of gold. So Maitreya looks at him and says, 1 second, my husband. Before I accept these cows, I want to ask you just one question. If I take these cows, will I become immortal? If I take the cows, will I become immortal? So Yagi Balaka looks at her and says, you'll be very comfortable. You'll have a beautiful house. You'll have servants. You'll eat the best food. But I'm sorry to tell you, my dear wife, even if I give you these cows, you won't become immortal. Maitreya looks at her husband and says, then keep your cows. I want immortality. The Yajnavalaka looks at her and says, you know, Maitreya, I've always loved you, but today you are dearer to me than ever before. Come, sit beside me. I will confer upon you immortality. So he begins. And he starts with showing her the most lovable nature of our own self. That we love ourselves more than anything else. And he did this by saying, the husband doesn't love the wife merely because it's the wife, it's because it's my wife. The children are not dear for the sake of the children, but because they're my children. The money is not dear for the sake of the money, it's dear because it's my money. The house is not dear for the sake of the house, it's my house. Everything is dear for the sake of the self. The self is the most lovable of all. And he begins by pointing out this fact that really everything that we love is because we love it because of our love for our own self. And because the self is the most lovable, we should know who this self is. There's a famous thing he says, Tatat Pashotaviya Mantaviya Kundiyastaviya. That self should be heard about. That self should be thought about. That self should be contemplated on. So the wife says, well, who is this self that's the most lovable? And he says, very briefly, the self is the light by which we live in. So Maitreya says, yeah, but we live in the light of the sun. So Yajnavalkya says, well, when the sun is not gone down, then we live in the light of the self. She says, no, but then I live in the light of the moon. When the moon is not there, then you live in the light of the self. Yeah, but when the moon and the stars and the sun are gone, I live by the light of the fire. When the fire and the moon and the sun and the stars and all lights are gone, that light that remains, which never goes out, the light that we live in, that we breathe in, that we're born in, that we abide in, that we dissolve in, that light is the most lovable self. You are that immortal light. And Maitreya looked at her husband and said, Yajnavalkya, you have conferred upon me immortality. The story ends. A couple of things about that. It shows, first of all, you don't have to be a man to attain immortality or liberation or anything, because here was a woman who did no yoga, no nothing, but she had one quality that they say is very necessary. She didn't want the gold. I would have taken the gold. Absolutely. Because immortality, but she had that dispassion that what I really want is something lasting, eternal, immortal. Give me that. That's the criteria for someone who wants that. They're the candidate who can understand that when you turn out all the lights, there's one light that never goes out, and that's the light of the self. That's the immortal self. That's the Vrindavan story. So I thought I'd share that with you. It's kind of interesting that in that ancient time, they had such a teaching that now, if we want, we can do that same business. Just in your mind, take away the sun and the moon and the lights and everything. You'll see there's a light inside you that's seeing the whole negation. And that's the same light that Maitreya saw when she said, thank you, you've conferred upon me immortality. Nothing more than that. Just recognizing that fact. It's quite an interesting thing. No other philosophy in the world has ever come up with that business. No Buddhist, no Jew, no Jain, no Christian, no Muslim. The unique teaching of the Upanishads that there's just one self who was never born, doesn't get old, doesn't get sick, has no diseases, and it never dies. The immortal self, that's our eternal nature. That's the Upanishadic teaching. Story.
Just pause for a second, Ira.
Yeah.
Just let me, please be careful of these sparks when I put some more wood